Hello, so we are about to start. Welcome today to this event on enabling nature-based solutions for climate adaptation. We will have an hour of discussion around how can we improve the enabling conditions to scale up NBS for adaptation. So we will have a great panel today to share some views on this. And we will have Manuel Pulgar Vidal, Global Lead on Climate and Energy for WLF International, giving some opening remarks. And then we will have a discussion with the panel, moderated by Manuel also. So hope you enjoy. Over to you, Manuel.
Thank you, Vane. I am so happy to be here with you for this event, which title it is Making Nature-Based Solutions Fit for Climate Adaptation. And look, I am always enjoying more events in which the main objective it is to explore. So this will be an exploration journey for an hour, because we will try to see how much nature-based solutions can fit with the needs of adaptation, even recognizing the limitation of the adaptation side of the climate agenda. And I will make some remarks to try to put in a broad and, I hope, good framework what it will be then the panel and the discussion around this topic. So the idea, and this is to the panelists, it is feel free, be candid to explore, to throw some ideas to the table, because I will explain why that is so important to explore when it is about nature-based solutions for adaptation. So let me start by saying, we know how important it is the traction that nature-based solutions is getting. That is happening, and for sure, we have to recognize all the effort of IUCN and some others, as Oxford University, among some other, the UNEP, UNDP, many other institutions, even NDC partnership, in developing that traction. But in the formal side, in the formal arena, probably that traction has been impulsed because of the UNEA 5 resolution. Can you hear me well? Okay. Because of the UNEA 5 resolution. Why? Because that has been the first time ever in which nature-based solutions has been recognized as a concept with a clear definition. That it is, fortunately, perfectly fitting with what IUCN defined as nature-based solutions some years before of UNEA 5. So now we do have the concept that, for me, the best way to summarize the concept it is by saying nature-based solutions means to put in a scale 3 main values that have to be present to qualify some intervention as nature-based solution. First, it has to address a societal challenge. That means climate change in its mitigation or adaptation side. That means food security, water security, health, or disaster risk management. That is the idea. Those are the main objectives that must be addressed because of your intervention through what it is called nature-based solution. But the second value, it is so important also, as important as the first. Your intervention must secure ecosystem integrity. Must secure ecosystem integrity. So if the intervention cannot secure that, sure, we have to avoid it. And even more sure, that is not nature-based solutions. If it can affect the ecosystem and the integrity and the services of the ecosystem, it is not nature-based solution. And the third concept and the third value, it is that it has to provide, it has to respect rights, and it has to provide benefits, social benefits, for people on the ground. So for me, it is so important to have these 3 main values as a way to see clearly how to define nature-based solutions. But UNEA 5 did it even more. Open a consultation process, so interesting global and regional consultation process. Also, it is discussing how to define standards, and probably we will discuss with Angela. I am with Angela in that, that we have to use the IUCN standards as the standards needed for the process, among some other elements. So we are working on that. And to be short, in this political traction reflection, fortunately, all of that process, it has been well received by the conventions. So that is why UNCBD, UNSCCC, UNCCD, and even Ramsar, among some others, have already recognized that they are following that and that they will respect what it is the process with UNEA. And that is the importance of the traction. So that is about nature-based solutions. Let me add something, because it is important for this debate. But something that emerged strongly in the consultation, in the global and even regional consultation, it is that countries are not fully understanding well the concept. No? It is a bit confused, the concept. So they are demanding for more clarity on the concept. But more than that, they are demanding for capacity building. And that is so, so important. Let me finish this political reflection by saying, I am fully convinced, always convinced, that sometimes what we do need to develop after getting something in the global arena as nature-based solutions with a concept, it is to translate it well to the domestic level. Because sometimes the lack of translation, that means to build capacities, to explain, to share information, etc., the lack of translation can promote a distortion of the concept. And that is what we have to avoid. So if we are able to be good translator of the concept, the standards, the safeguard, I am sure that in the domestic and even in the local level, countries, local governments will use NBS as a very effective tool to address their own societal challenge. But that is the NBS side. And probably something that I have to say to connect, it is that most of people is thinking in NBS for mitigation purposes. And yeah, it is more easy. Mitigation, it is mostly mathematic, and it is easy to count. But what about adaptation? What is happening with adaptation? Because when it is about adaptation, the use of nature-based solutions, for sure, it could be focused on developing interventions to address climate risks and climate vulnerability, and also to protect people, because that is an ecosystem, because that is the purpose when it is about adaptation. When we develop adaptation plans, it is for sure to, first, we have to evaluate our risk, and we have to develop concrete actions to reduce those risks and to prevent what it could be the consequences of the climate event. That it could be extreme, but even not necessarily extreme. No, we know how much ecosystem and how much habitat and how much species and how much the economic support for many, many populations are changing because of climate change. But we don't have the same metric for adaptation. It is not the mathematics of the mitigation. So that makes even more difficult to address adaptation. But also we know that when it is about adaptation, the result of our intervention, probably it could be confirmed in the long term. It is very difficult to confirm an adaptation action in the short term. So we do need to consider that part. But fortunately, some good things are happening. Some days ago, a good friend, well related to the green bonds, sent to me a taxonomy for adaptation. A taxonomy for resilience. That is fantastic, because that taxonomy probably could help us to identify what are those actions, in that case investment, because it was a taxonomy for investor, what kind of investment are strongly related to resilience objective. And so things are evolving, and that is positive. But what we do need it is to connect both, to do that connection in between. And for sure, and this is my last because I am taking too much time, as usual, the last, it is finance. Because when it is about nature-based solutions, what we know it is that the effectiveness of the tool can promote benefits, non-tangible but also tangible benefits to people, to population. But we do need to see how can we move more resources into nature-based solutions to promote more effective outcomes. So for today, we will discuss those things. How can we make nature-based solutions fit for purpose for climate adaptation? And probably to summarize these openings, what we do want to explore with you, friends, it is how can we enabling the conditions to make nature-based solutions an important tool for that adaptation purpose. And when I am referring to enabling conditions, it could be policy, political, financial, social, incentive, economic. We know that there are set of enabling conditions that could be developed for that purpose. So that is what we are going to discuss, for sure based in your own experience. So I will introduce one by one the panelists. I will start with you, Angela, if you allow me that. Angela, it is one of those pillars supporting the nature-based solutions evolution. Yeah, this woman is lady like supporting the progress with nature-based solutions, what I will always appreciate. Because she's sharing the Commission for Ecosystem Management with IUCN. She has historically worked in the IUCN standards for nature-based solutions, and also she's following the political process related to nature-based solutions because of the UNEA resolution. So based on that experience, Angela, with the standards, I do want to ask you how much the standard it is creating conditions to enabling, it is creating the basis for enabling those conditions to make nature-based solutions more effective in the domestic level. And what, in your point of view, could be the complements to the standards to have governments, local governments, or institutions on the ground to make those to use this instrument in a more effective way? Because for sure it is not just about a standard. Probably there are some other enabling conditions that we have to develop. Do we have a portable mic or some other mic there? So Angela, please.
Good morning. Okay. Good morning, and thank you, Manuel, for the introduction and for the invitation to participate in this interesting panel. Yes, well, I will first start recalling the evolution of the nature-based solutions and how it was developed, because I think it's important to understand the reasoning behind that, why we thought that it was important to establish first a definition on NBS and later on the standard. So we used to work for many years on ecosystem-based adaptation, and I will go back to that, since 2009, when it was adopted by the Convention on Biological Diversity, because when we began the discussions on climate change adaptation, we, our community, scientific community and practitioners, we thought that it was extremely relevant to make sure that adaptation was ecosystem-based. And this is why the development of the principles and the work on EBA was framed on the ecosystem approach, but it was still very much, let's say, framed in the community of the Convention on Biological Diversity. So when the SDGs were also launched, we thought that it was extremely relevant to go beyond the conservation objectives and make sure that any action that was implemented on behalf of climate change, I would prefer to link climate change mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage, because this is a continuum. And we all know that the less we do on mitigation, the more we need to do on mitigation, on adaptation, and then the more we need to focus on loss and damage. So it's a continuum. But we were concerned about the potential trade-offs that existed in any mitigation or adaptation actions. So this is why we thought that it was important to consider the need to address the complexity that we have currently, no, and the connection that exists in all these global challenges. So the biodiversity loss, the ecosystem degradation, climate change, including mitigation, adaptation, and loss and damage, water security, food security, human health, they are all interconnected. So this is why our idea was to address all these elements or all these challenges in an integrated manner. That is the first important message, and this is why the global standard includes in the first criteria the importance of addressing the societal challenges. But I would say that this is one step beyond on what we have now, and is the need to address all the criteria, all the challenges, simultaneously. Because at the end, we need to avoid trade-offs. The problems that we have now is because we are on behalf, in many cases, of some practices like restoration, like watershed management in many cases. Any action, we are creating trade-offs, could be social trade-offs, environmental trade-offs, governance trade-offs. So I think this is the most important topic in our view. You also already mentioned the importance of ecosystem integrity, the importance of guaranteeing that we are delivering also on biodiversity net gains, or the social safeguards, the cultural safeguards. So the decision that was taken internally in IUCN, the Commission and all the members, was to adopt a definition on NBS. And this definition, I would say, differently from the UNEA definition, includes a set of principles that were the basis for the development of the standard. And these principles were agreed upon all the members and were developed from an extensive assessment of the principles that were developed by ecosystem-based practices that are aligned with the definition of NBS. So then we arrived to, since the term NBS was misused or used everywhere, and we were concerned about the greenwashing, the high risk for social and indigenous communities. So we thought that it was extremely relevant to develop this standard to guarantee robust interventions, to avoid these trade-offs, to avoid greenwashing, and to make sure that we were addressing the problem in an integrated manner. So the standard was launched in 2020, and is at this point we have more the community, and this is one important outcome of practitioners that are using the standard. It goes beyond 3,000. We also have more than 60,000 downloads of the standard. The standard is based on the ICL good practice process, which requires that every 4 years the standard needs to be updated or reviewed. So we are at this point in that moment, and I want to finalize this question with that, because we are starting the consultation process for reviewing the standard, and this includes technical consultations to experts, because it has to be evidence-based. It's not opinions, it's not ideas, it's evidence-based from science and knowledge. And the process is beginning at the end of this month until the consultation will be also up to the end of January. And after that, we follow the internal IUCN process to make sure that it's approved before the next World Conservation Congress. So I think with that, I will finalize this first intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And now I would like to go into you, Nahma Mohamed, Head of Nature-Based Solutions with UNEP WCMC. And Angela has just mentioned very important things. First, I think that is important. It is that when implement NBS, we have to avoid to fragment the societal challenge. We have to integrate it. We have to secure that we are not promoting any kind of greenwashing, and for sure the standards as a very dynamic instrument to evolve and to make more high quality interventions on NBS. But Nahba, as we mentioned in the concept for this event, this session aims to explore the enabling conditions, policy and regulation, finance, metrics, and capacities. And UNEP, as you know, UNEP it is in charge of moving and implement all these UNEA 5 resolution, and you've been in charge of the consultation process. So based in the work, a strong work of UNEP CMC with nature-based solutions, what you do suggest would be so important to be implemented or to be enabled to make nature-based solutions an effective instrument?
Thank you very much, Manuel. And so it's really good to represent UNEP WCMC. As you mentioned, we are technical support and a biodiversity center for excellence. I think probably I want to start with my big message today is that the NDCs 3.0 have to actually cost the means of implementation. That is a big challenge. The means of implementation, the knowledge, the capacity building, the policy, everything that goes into into making the commitments a reality is often not costed. The data that we need to understand. So I think my first point actually builds very much on the question that you ask, is I think we need to bring together the different knowledges to understand exactly what are the benefits of nature-based solutions for adaptation. We need to bring the ecological expertise to understand the ecosystem services that can be delivered through nature-based solutions. We need to bring socioeconomic and development expertise that can speak to the social outcomes of nature-based solutions. And so I do think we need to start working as colleagues that are perhaps trained and schooled in the natural and environmental sciences to become much more comfortable to work in an integrated way so that nature-based solutions actually delivers the benefits that the multiple benefits that we expect them to. We definitely need to get, and we have many examples of integrated assessments. I mean, I've been astounded, and that's positive. Events dealing with adaptation in cities, coastal and your marine systems. I did an event yesterday with infrastructure on climate resilient infrastructure. It's incredible. I was speaking to the colleagues when we were arriving. They are talking the language of ecosystem services. They're talking the language of natural capital assessments that are the basis for understanding and identifying climate vulnerability and resilience, and then from there to work with nature. I think the third sort of point is we need to be able to equip ourselves to measure the multiple benefits. Else we're not going to be able to demonstrate that nature-based solutions are a better investment than the more traditional ways of delivering on city planning or infrastructure planning or coastal zone management. So we need to be able to make the case exactly as Angela said, with the evidence. And so for UNEP WCMC, it has been incredible. We work from the spectrum, as you said, we supported some of the technical thinking and around the nature-based solutions consultations, but we also have the wonderful opportunity to work on the ground with national partners who are implementing ecosystem-based adaptation projects across the world, and to begin to implement and design ecosystem-based adaptation projects that deliver multiple benefits, to be able to put in place the monitoring, evaluation, and learning systems so we can, over time, demonstrate that these benefits are materializing and we continue to make the case for funding. I think, Manuel, I had one question that lots of people have been asking me. Why do we even need a term like nature-based solutions when people have been doing this work? You spoke, Angela, about early 2009, 2008. Some people who are working on regenerative agriculture or ecological design and infrastructure, this is decades of work, of testing, of trying. So do we really need nature-based solutions? We need a term like this. Are we just not confusing what people are doing? And I think for me, the term really represents a mind shift, that we are finally understanding after maybe a decade of seeing how dependent our societies, our economies, the health and well-being of people are on nature. And I think that for me is the exciting part of nature-based solutions, that finally we begin to understand that without nature, what future do we have? What is the well-being? What would be the ability of us to withstand, some of the extreme impacts we are already feeling? And I really am pleased that Angela mentioned that If we don't do enough mitigation, we're going to have to adapt more. If we don't keep mitigation in rein. And for sure, my most difficult moment here at COP29 was listening to the emissions and adaptation gap report. It is terrifying what the figures are saying. And it's more terrifying because we can put our television on and we will see it. We will see the impacts already being felt. And so this is not something we need to plan for in a decade or two. It's happening. You know, and I don't want us to come to a COP and the main discussion is on loss and damage. Because if we're going to carry on like that, in the vein that we are now, our main discussion is unfortunately going to be about loss and damage.
Wow, fantastic, Najma. You know, this idea of a mind shift, it is so important because it is true. Sometimes to bring a title could sound useless. Why a new title if we are talking on something that it has been developed for years? But sometimes we do need those titles and those packages, well structured, to mainstream the concept, the action, and the coherence of those actions into traditional ways of thinking. Because you have just mentioned something so important. A couple of days ago, I was referring to these climate extreme events, no, in Rio Grande do Sul, in Valencia, in Philippines, around the world. And when you see the news, what journalists are used to doing? This has been the most extreme flood since 1950 something. So they are always comparing to the past, and they are not identifying that this is something that we will continue suffering, that these climate extreme events are going to affect us for the, who knows, many decades. So we do need to be prepared and to have this kind of instruments that are so important. But also because sometimes our business as usual ways of thinking domestically, no, are so difficult to be changed. I remember in Peru, the water supply entity that mostly has great infrastructure engineers, no? For them, it is so difficult to understand green infrastructure. They don't know what to do. They know how to put some concrete into some channel and to do those kind of all infrastructure. So to achieve that, it is so difficult. So thank you, Najma. So it is perfect segue to coming to you, Mariana. Mariana Panuncio, your title is fantastic for this debate because it is the country, domestic, engagement, to convene and to mainstream, director of the NDC partnership, a platform to build capacity. So 3 elements so important to enabling condition, as Najma mentioned, capacity building, policy, knowledge are through key enabling conditions. So Mariana, 2 things based on your experience with NDC. Despite that it is NDC, we know that you are receiving NBS demand, no, or requirement, no demand, requirement. And so what kind of requirement countries are demanding or requesting, and why you do think that is happening? And second, how effective it is a platform as the NDC partnership to build and to enable in those conditions? Could be that, this one. Yeah,
okay.
I think that is too short.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning, and thank you, Manuel, for and my colleagues here for the conversation we're having. So, first, let me start by sharing very briefly for those of you who don't know what the NDC partnership, what it is, and then I'll land into the questions that Manuel posed. So, very briefly, the NDC partnership is a global coalition that brings together over 200 members that include over 130 countries, developed and developing, and over 100 international institutions. Among them, actually, all of the ones that are sitting at this table, WWF, UNEP, and IUCN, as well as others, basically to drive climate action in line with Sustainable Development Goals. What makes the partnership unique is that we basically are country-driven. That means that we work with all of our developing country members to understand what their priorities are, what their needs are, and we help them articulate those priorities in the form of requests for support. And then we turn to our broad membership to provide technical assistance, expertise, finance to address those needs. And basically we put together tailored packages of support that really draws on the strength of different members. So to explain, so to address Manuel's question, what are we seeing? So the partnership has been around for 8 years. We have we have cataloged every single request that a country has submitted, and we have over 6,000 of requests over 8 years. And basically what we have found is that indeed, there is demand, even though the focus of the NDC partnership is NDCs as the overall umbrella for climate action. Within that, not surprisingly, there are questions related to how you address the challenges of addressing both the climate challenge and nature biodiversity loss. And so what I can tell you is what we have found is 77 countries have requested support through the NDC partnership on issues related. What we have seen the main topic being, if I have to say a give trend, is nature and food. And within that, nearly half, 47% of those nature and food requests are focused on the subtopic of biodiversity. And that includes oceans and coasts, the forest sector, and requests related to nature-based solutions and ecosystem services. And interestingly enough, for our own conversation, is that when you look at those requests, almost half of them, 49%, are focused on adaptation. 29% are cross-cutting, meaning a combination of mitigation and adaptation, and then the rest mitigation. So basically, we're saying almost 80% of those requests are adaptation-related, so in some way or another. So I think there is a basis for demand. And what I can say is we try to mobilize our members to respond to requests, and we have an average response rate of 70%. But for these requests, we have 55% of them are responded to, which means that we still have a significant gap in responding to that support. So countries are asking for it, but basically a bit over half, 55%, are being addressed, which means that we have work to do in terms of mobilizing expertise to respond to those requests. What is it that, collectively as the partnership we can do? We basically support countries to address this by responding to them based on what they need. And what we have seen is that we work with countries on the full cycle of the NDCs, so basically from the articulation and the development of the NDCs to the implementation to the mobilization of finance. And within that, we work across the board. We work on, if a country needs to develop policy, strategies, and frameworks, if they need to develop specific technical analysis, if they need to do MRV, if they need to do budgeting, capacity building. So there are three things that I would highlight that are pertinent for this conversation. Number one is, I think, a huge issue, and I imagine we're going to come back to this conversation, but it's this question of capacity in countries to do the integration. You need people who have the ability to bring these agendas together in a very tangible and technical way. And one thing that we do is we support what are called embedded advisors. So I think that's an opportunity. The second thing is helping identify those priorities that actually bring these agendas together. And that is something that we can also support. And ultimately, and operationalizing those. And ultimately is mobilizing the support. So how do you deal with the issue of financing actions that really bring these topics together in the context of adaptation, nature-based solutions for adaptation? Maybe let me stop here. I know you want to do a second round.
Thank you, Mariana. It's a fantastic platform. I love this kind of platform that, because are tailor-made, can more effectively respond to the real needs of some concrete country. That's the idea, because sometimes we believe that here we are in the global arena and that we can send things and everybody will take it, and that is not the reality. People, countries, governments, authorities will demand some concrete things, will request some concrete technical assistance to move things forward. So, Mireille Atala, Chief of UNEP's Adaptation and Resilience, we deeply appreciate your participation. Thank you for that. And probably to summarize, because you have just arrived, we are discussing, so we all have recognized the importance of NBS and how effective it could be. How much is getting traction, how instrumental the standards are to secure high quality intervention, and then we have moved into what are those conditions that we can enable domestically to have countries or local governments using that instrument. So some elements that have emerged, capacity building, policy, knowledge, platform, standards as a dynamic standards that it is evolving. So I do want to go to you, Mireille, to ask you, what in your point of view are those enabling conditions? And let me say that because probably we will have a second round, a short second round, then I will ask to you all, if you were in a position in which you have to define just one top priority to enabling domestic conditions, what that would be. Okay, but first over to you, Mireille. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and sorry for the delay. I got entangled in the shuttle buses this morning. I think it's a very nice segue because one of the things that we do within UNEP is we support countries with their national adaptation planning process. And I think that this also supports, so, you know, in NDCs we're trying to integrate adaptation, and in adaptation we're trying to integrate nature. And so one of the things that we've realized is that you know, the priorities that are being identified from an adaptation point of view are agriculture and food security, water security, and health. These are the kind of top three, and infrastructure. How do you render infrastructure resilient in the long term in the face of climate impacts? And here, for example, on infrastructure, what we've found is that, you know, rather than giving a space for nature as a standalone in adaptation planning, it's nature-based infrastructure. So it's combining gray and green infrastructure together, because nature, and I would say ordinary nature, as you know, not necessarily protected areas or targeting specific species, but really grasslands, shrublands, ordinary forests, so on and so forth, have an incredible role to play in terms of resilience. So combining gray and green infrastructure is one area, and what we've started to look at is comparative resilience of infrastructure where we have nature versus where we don't have nature, and that has made a really critical, allowed to make a lot of headway with ministries of transport, urban planning, and so on, that actually have become quite interested in nature-based solutions. Second, in the area of water security, really pushing for wetland restoration, wetland maintenance, broad watershed management also has enabled quite a bit of our partners to acknowledge the fact that with nature, runoff is reduced. You know, the things that we usually say from a theoretical point of view have really come to the fore. And then on agriculture, similarly, you know, when you look at yields in agroforestry areas versus low yields in times of droughts in areas that are monoculture or that don't have a combination of, or that don't have rich nature, I think that's also allowed us to make a big headway in that. So we see that from these small pilots or test areas, we see that there's an uptake and an increased demand. But nonetheless, you know, we publish the State of Finance for Nature report every year. And in 2023, we saw that there's $200 billion per year going for nature-based solutions to help deliver on the climate, biodiversity, and land degradation agenda. What we also saw is that there's $7 trillion that are going towards actions that are destroying nature. So that's the key push that we are doing with UNEP-FI, the UNEP Finance Initiative, where we're working with the task force on climate disclosures and nature disclosures to disclose finance, that is how financial flows are actually impacting nature. But then we're taking it a step further, because now we're going from disclosure and what in terms of standards for financial institutions, and now we're going to the how. So how do you change those, how do you influence those financial flows so that nature is not taken as a free asset, but rather regarded as a valuable asset whose loss actually creates a risk on your financial, on your business viability. It's unfortunate, but financial institutions and the business sector are only really starting to acknowledge nature now that they are being hit by climate crisis. And so now we see, for example, entities like Ecom, the largest coffee trader in the world, that is looking at climate impacts on its value chain, on the resilience of its value chain, and acknowledging the fact that without nature embedded in the business model, that resilience is undermined. So I don't know if that responds to the question, but I think it's a gradual process which we need to accelerate. And by way of acceleration, essentially, we're working with ministries of finance and we're working with public treasuries to support natural capital accounting so that, again, in a country's budget sheet, so to speak, nature is not taken as a free asset, but its destruction is incorporated and acknowledged as a cost to the countries.
Thank you, Mireille. Those numbers are dramatic. If I got the number well, 7 trillion of activities damaging nature. Wow. You know that yesterday I heard a number that for me it was like, the oil industry has gotten benefits since 1970 of $2 billion a day. $2 billion a day. And somebody, because it is not my phrase, made this reflection. Can you imagine if we had been able to just put a tax of 10% to them, just to those profits? Probably we would have been more able not to don't move the world towards currently we are so dramatic. So thank you, Mireille. So the 7 trillion question. So the question that I announced, so just 2 minutes. If you were to define how to enable in those conditions in the domestic level to make NBS a very effective, considering that those conditions must be tailor-made, what do you suggest to promote, to develop, to think on? It can be any of you in any order, but
okay. So
seems that you would like to start.
No. Well, only one topic, because I would like to prioritize that one. If we would like really to promote transformative adaptation, not just coping strategies or incremental adaptation, we need to be really transformative. So I would suggest to prioritize the spatial planning component. And this is very much aligned with the first target of the Global Biodiversity Framework. For me, spatial planning at different scales is the best way to really make sure that different challenges are addressed at the landscape level, using as the basis the ecosystem risk assessment to really understand the levels of risk of the existing ecosystems from the bottom to the higher levels. So I will just keep that one as a priority.
Maybe I'll build on that, and I will say that if I have to choose one opportunity, is to leverage the opportunity that we have right now with the preparation of the NDCs 3.0, and the fact that countries still, many of them still need to prepare their NBSAPs, and really looking at the integration of those. And I know it's a challenge because the timing is tight, but making sure that at least countries reflect that in their NDCs, and then we use the opportunity of the follow-up process, which is to operationalize the NDC through NDC implementation plans, investment planning, to really dig deeper into these synergies so that we really have a mandate, countries provide a mandate for the work to come on this integration for the years to come.
I'll give one that I've heard repeated over and over again. I mean, I think it was really heartening that the adaptation gap report said that about 86% of countries have at least one adaptation planning instrument. But I think the message from on-the-ground actors that are trying to follow the locally led adaptation principles, I think endorsed by more than 130 stakeholders, is actually that we need to understand climate vulnerability at particular scale so that we design the right sort of nature-based solutions for adaptation, in the right places. And so I do think I would make the case to downscale our climate vulnerability assessments to the right level so that we can have the best designed and most efficient nature-based solutions for adaptation.
Money. I think because, I tend to say that where money goes, where finance flows, action follows, and it can tend to either lift everything that my three esteemed panelists have said or undermine it. And so I think we really need to continue working on integrating proper nature and climate in credit risk assessments, in financial arrangements, so that we're not undoing with the left hand what we try to do with the right hand.
Good. Wow, fantastic. Planning component, the spatial planning component, NDCs, NBSAPs that also are part of the planning process. And so interesting because there is a NDC partnership and an NBSAPs accelerate. No? So it means that we have already understood the need of build that capacity by providing this kind of technical assistance in a tailor-made base by having the request and bringing the expert, because nobody can attribute to have the full ability to attend all of those requests. You have to bring the expert into the table to put the two sides to talk each to other, and I think that is so important. No, in collaboration, no, that then adaptation gap report and climate vulnerability, you know, the evidence, the information, it is so important, and the money, show me the money, no, also so instrumental. So look, we have 6 more minutes. Do you want to make some question? Please feel free to do it. We can get, yeah, please. Could you identify yourself and...
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right, so Jessica Zapata from WWF International. I've always thought that one key issue to mainstream nature-based solutions is actually the role of academia and education. And I'm saying this because I think that the traditional way of educations and the traditional education doesn't really allow us to have professionals that actually can design high integrity nature-based solutions. They don't know how to do it, right? And I think Manuel mentioned that before. We have amazing engineers in different areas, but they don't really know how to do nature-based solutions. So my question is, what's your take on that, and how do you see that role of academia and education in mainstreaming nature-based solutions, and how do you see your role as well in supporting that effort?
One more, if you want, one more question, please. Also identify yourself, please.
Hi, hope you can hear me. So Thomas from sorry.
Don't get, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Thomas from Booking Holdings, with a parent company of Booking.com, Priceline, Agoda, big travel company. I'd actually like to kind of follow on from the same question that Jessica just asked, but from a business perspective. So it'd be great to understand how you see the role of business also. I've heard a lot in the adaptation report in terms of the role of the private sector as well, but if we could have a little bit of a discussion between differences between academia and business together with organizations like yourselves, I think that'd be really great.
Good, thank you. So who do you want to get those questions?
I'm happy just to make a start, and it's wonderful to have Mireille because about a year ago, we work, as I mentioned, UNEP WCMC. We are a Center for Biodiversity Excellence, and we were requested to do a course, to design a self-guided course on integrating nature in national adaptation planning. And it really forced us as technical experts to begin to get the message crystal clear, to be able to engage. And the course is targeted at anyone that engages in adaptation planning. We're hoping that engineers, planners, ecologists, local level officials will actually take the course. It's very interactive. It's getting people comfortable with looking at the landscape, understanding vulnerability, exploring what the nature-based solutions options are. And I think when we started, we thought, oh, this is going to be, easy peasy, we've got all the technical knowledge and understanding, but I think to really deliver a training course, and I hope that our client was satisfied with the course, but it certainly forced us to begin to understand, how do we simply provide a guidance to people that don't come from the background that we do, but to understand why nature is important at every stage of the national adaptation planning process. And that was really good for us as well, to be able to engage. And one point on engaging the private sector is that the UNEP WCMC runs an annual event called the Nature Action Dialogues, which is targeted at the private sector. And for this year, there was a request to do a session on nature-based solutions. And there were a lot of questions and requests for exactly probably the NDC partnerships, getting it from countries, but from the private sector. How do we do this? We want to, but how? So I think we probably need lots more guidance, lots more an interactive way and a practical way, because we don't want this to stay in the, we all know why we need to do it, we need to get to the how. And so that course really, thank you to UNEP for giving us, the task of trying to really create something, interactive, practical, and really to equip users with the how.
Thank you. And, a last intervention. Yep, you have the mic.
No, just quickly regarding the business question. The IUCN Global Standard at this point is directed to the private sector, anyone in the communities or anyone that is interested to apply the global standard, and also for policy. We refer usually on NBS interventions that covers any action that goes beyond projects.
Excellent. Some last idea? If not, no problem. Look, what a fantastic panel. I have enjoyed it. It is good to have somebody from Booking here. I hope that in the future, when I go to Booking, some high-quality MBS interventions pop up. No, I'm just kidding. But let me say something to the private sector. Be part of the process, because this process, what it is seeking or aiming to, it is to promote high-quality intervention. So to be sure that these kind of interventions, well developed with high integrity, will create co-benefits for everybody, and for sure we are mostly focusing on the people on the ground, the most vulnerable. Because if not, and if we are not part of a process looking for high integrity, the risk to distort the process and the concept, it is always high, no? Look, I believe on the carbon market, but how difficult it is, and it has been for the private sector to work on carbon market when there are all these reputational problems. Despite that, we are working on that for 25 years, or more than 20 years at least, no? So we have to avoid to repeat the same. We have to consolidate this concept, despite that sometimes the titles seems useless, but it is to package well good interventions that can promote this high integrity and high quality. So I would like to ask you to join me with a big applause to Angela, Nagma, Mariana, and Mireille for strong women. And I am so happy. My next panel, it is about gender responsive implementation. So you have inspired me for that. Thank you very much. And I would like to have a photo. So, Vane.